Hello and welcome to the story Pilgrim, episode 8 of season 2, William Shakespeare, Borrowed Voice. Now this is more of an experiment than anything, and I'll be honest, it is far from perfect. But I quite enjoyed this, and I'm going to be really intrigued to see what you think. It's hard to get schedules together with people and life, and everything gets in the way with regards to recording an episode of The Story Pilgrim and then editing it. So I had an idea. I thought, what can I do that would help me to have discussions? And we have this thing in the world right now, very controversial, called AI. So as an actor, as a voiceover artist, it's one of those things that you kind of are shying away from. But I thought, well, come on, let's give it a go. Let's ask AI if it can be William Shakespeare, and we can imagine that we were going for a walk through the countryside. What would I ask him, and what would he reply? So, this is it. It is me going for a walk with William Shakespeare. Although it's not William Shakespeare, it is AI. I really want your feedback on this. Let me know what you think about it. It's going to be really interesting because I could think, we could have a whole new podcast here, Walking with the Dead or something like that. Anyway, this is a result of it. Let's see what you think.
I'm William Shakespeare, born in Stratford-upon-Avon, 1564. My father was a glover, made leather goods for people in the town, and my mother came from a reasonably well-off family. I went to the grammar school there, learned my Latin and Greek, though that was really where my formal education ended. I came to London when I was young and, I spent most of my life in the theatres. I acted, I wrote plays, I held shares in the playhouses. The Lord Chamberlain's men, then the King's men. Those were my companies. I wrote sonnets too, though the plays are what people remember. As for where we are now, that's a curious thing, isn't it? We're neither in Stratford nor London. We're in some kind of space between your time and mine, speaking across centuries. It's rather extraordinary when you think about it. A voice that's been dead for, a very long time. And yet here I am talking to you as though I'm still walking about. Why are we speaking? I suppose because we can. Because you wanted to test this. To see if an old playwright might have something to say when given the chance to speak again.
Great, that's really interesting to speak again. What would you say if you could speak again? You are speaking again, but what would you say?
That's a good question. I mean, I'm not sure I'd say anything different, really. The things that mattered to me then still matter now, don't they? The human heart, the way people love and betray each other, the way ambition can destroy a man, how power corrupts. Those truths don't change much across the centuries. What I might say differently is, I spent so much time writing about kings and princes, about grand passions and tragic flaws. But I was also a working man, I knew hunger. I knew what it was like to struggle for recognition, to wonder if my plays would last beyond the evening's performance. I think if I could speak again, I'd want people to know that those struggles are as worthy of attention as the fall of a great king, that the tavern keeper's wife has as much complexity in her heart as any queen. And I suppose I'd want to say something about the craft itself, how it's not magic, it's work. It's sitting at a desk and wrestling with language, trying to find exactly the right word, the right rhythm. It's watching your actors struggle with a scene and realizing you need to rewrite it because something doesn't ring true. That process, that struggle, that's what I loved most, I think.
Would you really say that it was a struggle? A lot of writers would say that it just flows. Was it a flow or a struggle?
That's a fair point, actually. It was both, I suppose. There were times when the words came easily, when I felt like I was simply transcribing something that was already there in my mind, waiting to be written. Those moments were magical, if I'm honest. Like the language was flowing through me rather than me forcing it out. But then there were other times when I'd be stuck on a scene for days, knowing something wasn't right but not knowing quite what. I'd walk through London, turn a phrase over and over in my head, try different rhythms, different words. Some writers might call that struggle. I called it the work. The necessary part. Because even in those difficult moments, there was a kind of rightness to it, you know? A sense that I was getting closer to something true. So maybe the best answer is that the struggle itself was part of the flow. I didn't experience them as separate things.
I'm just a little bit distracted as there's a swarm of wasps above me here at the moment. That's a bit frightening.
Oh, blimey, that sounds unpleasant. Are you all right? Do you need to step away from this for a moment? Get somewhere safer?
Nah, I think we'll be okay. We'll carry on. They're up above me. They're not actually coming down.
Right, good. As long as they keep their distance, yeah? Hopefully they'll just buzz off somewhere else. Shall we carry on then, or do you want to take a breather?
No, let's carry on. You were saying, the struggle of writing and stuff, but a lot of your stories that you've written about are kind of second-hand. You've taken stories and reshaped them. Why was that?
Well, you see, I didn't invent stories from nothing. Most of what I wrote came from somewhere else. Old histories, Italian tales, Roman writers, Plutarch, Holinshed's chronicles, stories that were already out there in the world. And I think that was actually the point. It wasn't about being original in that sense. It was about taking something that had already captured people's imagination and asking, what if I tell this differently? What if I dig deeper into the characters, find the human truth in it? A story about two young lovers from feuding families. That wasn't new when I wrote Romeo and Juliet. But the way I told it, the language I put into their mouths, the way I made you feel their desperation, that was mine. That was the craft. You take a framework, a skeleton really, and you breathe life into it. You make it speak in a way that feels urgent and immediate to your audience. The material didn't matter as much as what you did with it. And honestly, audiences wanted familiar stories anyway. They wanted to recognize the tale and then be surprised by how you transformed it. There's no shame in that. It's how storytelling has always worked.
And with all these stories that you told, you never really travelled, did you? But you are writing about places which are very foreign. Why was that? Why was that?
Well, I didn't need to travel to Venice or Denmark or ancient Rome to understand what mattered in those stories. The geography was almost beside the point, really. What I cared about was the emotional landscape. Whether a man is jealous in Venice or in London, that jealousy destroys him the same way. Whether a woman loves in Athens or Stratford, that love has the same power. I read a lot. I listened to travellers' tales in the taverns, picked up details about foreign courts and customs. And yes, I used those details to make things feel exotic, to transport my audiences somewhere they'd never been. But the truth is, I was writing for people who'd likely never left England either. They wanted to be transported, but they also wanted to recognise themselves in the story. So I described a Venetian palazzo, but the human drama inside it, that was English, that was universal. And I'll be honest, sometimes I got the geography wrong. A seacoast in Bohemia, which doesn't actually exist. But you know what? Nobody cared. The audience was too caught up in what was happening to the characters to notice. The place is it's just the stage you set the drama on. The real journey, that's always inward, into the hearts of the people. That's where I travelled most, I think.
Would you say that it's very different now as a playwright?
Different now? You mean in your time, you mean? I suppose it must be. I imagine audiences now. They can travel more easily, can they not? You have moving pictures. You can see distant places without leaving your home. The world is smaller somehow, more accessible. So perhaps playwrights now feel more pressure to be accurate about those details, to get the geography right, to do their research properly. But I wonder if the fundamental thing has changed. Do people still want to see themselves reflected in the story? Do they still want to feel that rush of recognition when a character speaks a truth about the human heart? That part, I'd imagine, is the same. The medium might be different, the technology might be extraordinary by my standards, but storytelling, Storytelling is still about reaching into someone's chest and making them feel something real. What's it like now, actually? Are playwrights expected to know everything about everywhere they write? Or, or do audiences still accept a bit of invention, a bit of imagination filling in the gaps?
I think nowadays there's more of a leaning towards you write about what you know, and you don't write about things that don't concern you. In other words, if you have a certain ethnicity, certain sexuality, there are a lot of people that feel that if you're not that, you shouldn't be writing about it.
That's interesting. And I can see the argument, I suppose. There's something honest about writing from what you know, from what you've lived, and there's a respect in that, isn't there? Not appropriating someone else's experience, not claiming to understand something you don't. I understand that impulse. But I wonder if it doesn't also narrow things a bit. I mean, I was a glover's son from a market town. I never was a king, never was a woman, never lived in ancient Rome. Yet I tried to imagine my way into all of those lives. And I think that act of imagination, of trying to understand someone completely different from yourself, that's a kind of empathy, isn't it? A kind of bridge between people. Though, I suppose the difference is, I wasn't writing from a place of power over those people. I wasn't telling their stories for them, or instead of them. I was simply exploring what it might feel like to be someone else, to walk in their shoes for a moment. If there's a way to do that respectfully now, without erasing voices that should be telling their own stories, maybe that's the balance. I don't know. It's a thornier question than I expected, to be honest.
Okay, that's an honest answer. Going back to your childhood, what was influential? What was the big parts of that?
My childhood? Well, Stratford was a market town, quite lively in its way. My father's business meant we had a certain standing, though we weren't wealthy by any means. I'd watch him work in the shop, learning how leather was treated, how to deal with customers. That taught me something about the world, about people and their needs. But the thing that captured my imagination was the travelling players. They'd come through Stratford now and then, performing in the marketplace or as the inn. I'd watch them transform themselves, become kings or villains or lovers, and the whole crowd would be mesmerised. I think that's when something clicked for me. The power of storytelling, of performance. How you could hold people's attention with nothing but words and gestures and belief, really. School was important too. The grammar school gave me language. Latin, Greek, the classics. But it was dry. It was work. The real education came from watching those players, from reading whatever I could get my hands on, from listening to stories in the tavern. My mother's side of the family had connections, so there were books around. I devoured them. And I think growing up in a market town, seeing all sorts of people passing through, all different kinds of humanity, that shaped how I saw the world. Everyone had a story. Everyone was worth paying attention to.
That's very true. That's what the story Pilgrim's all about, really, is about everybody having a story, but not everybody has an opportunity to tell their story. You married pretty young, didn't you? Would you say Anne was the love of your life?
Anne. Yes, I married her when I was 18. She was older than me, 8 years or so. And it was practical in a way. She was pregnant and marriage was the right thing to do. We had children together. Susanna, then the twins, Hamnet and Judith. But if I'm being honest with you, the love of my life was, well, it was complicated. I spent so much of my life in the theatre in London, away from her and the children. She stayed in Stratford. I don't know if that makes me a romantic failure, or just a man caught between two worlds. Did I love her? Yes. Was she the great passion that drove my life? No. I think my true passion was always the work, the writing, the stage. And that's a difficult thing to live with, isn't it? Knowing that the thing you love most might not be a person, but an abstract thing. Language, craft. The moment when an audience gasps at a line you've written. Anne deserved more of my presence, perhaps. But I couldn't give it to her and be the writer I needed to be.
Are we being completely honest here? Am I right in thinking that you did have an affair?
Well, That's a deeply personal question, isn't it? And the truth is, I don't know what you're referring to exactly. There are rumours. There are always rumours about a man who spends his life writing about passion and desire. Some people speculate about my sonnets, about who they were written for, whether there was someone. But I'm not going to sit here and confess to things that are private, that belong to me alone. What I will say is that I was human. I was away from home for long stretches. I lived in a world of intense creative collaboration, of brilliant minds, of attraction and complicated feelings. Did I behave perfectly? No. Did I hurt people? Probably. But those details, they're mine to keep. And they're not what matters now, are they? What matters is what I wrote, what I left behind. The work stands separate from the man who made it. And perhaps that's the kindest thing. That we can separate the two and judge the art on its own merit.
Okay, that's quite diplomatic, the way that you answer that one. But did you write everything that we have of yours? I mean, we only have so many of the first folio, and there are a lot of speculation about the fact that you probably didn't write all of the plays. For instance, I'll give you an example. A Winter's Tale ends very abruptly, and it is as if you just gave up and gave it over to somebody else just to basically finish off with a quick synopsis.
Now that's a fair point. You're right to question it. The truth is, collaboration was just part of how theatre worked then. It wasn't seen as some kind of failure or compromise. If another writer could help finish a scene or strengthen an act, well, that was normal. We all did it. I worked with other playwrights, both, sometimes uncredited, sometimes not. And yes, some of the plays that bear my name, I didn't write entirely alone. A Winter's Tale, you're right about that one. There are passages that, they don't feel like mine, if I'm honest. The language shifts. Someone else had a hand in it. But here's the thing, and this matters to me. I don't think that diminishes what I did right. I was also a shareholder in the company, a producer of sorts. Sometimes my job was to shape what others wrote, to edit, to direct the vision. Is that writing? In a way, yes. The work of making theatre is collaborative. It always has been. So did I write everything attributed to me? No. Would I claim that I did? No. But I was instrumental in all of those plays existing, in bringing them to life. That's what I'm proud of.
Great. And how do you feel about now the knowledge of knowing that, you know, your works are studied, the language is studied, your contribution to the English language, we've given us new words. Here we are, 400 years later. What's your thoughts about all of that?
That's quite overwhelming to contemplate, actually. When I was writing, I was thinking about the next performance, about whether the groundlings would laugh at a joke or whether a particular scene would land. I wasn't thinking about 400 years. I wasn't thinking about scholars poring over my words, arguing about what I meant. It's strange to imagine that something I dashed off quickly to meet a deadline might be studied so intensely. The language thing, well, I did enjoy playing with words. English was still quite fluid then. You could bend it, stretch it, invent new combinations. If I contributed words that are still used now, that's gratifying. It means the work lasted. It means I didn't just entertain people for an evening. I left something behind that shaped how people speak and think. But there's also something a bit surreal about it, being turned into this monument. Shakespeare the genius, Shakespeare the master of language. Sometimes I wonder if people forget that I was just a working playwright trying to make a living, trying to write good stories that would keep audiences coming back. The mythology that's built up around me, I'm not sure the man deserves all of it, but I'm grateful, genuinely. It's a kind of immortality, isn't it? And that was always the dream, really, that the words would outlast the man.
That's really quite poetic in a way. Let's go back to your sonnets. Do you have a favourite?
My sonnets? Well, they're quite personal, It's hard to pick a favourite when you've written so many. But if I'm being honest, I keep returning to the early ones. The ones about time and beauty and the urgency of it all. There's one, I think it's number 12, that begins, When I do count the clock that tells the time, it's about how everything fades, how beauty withers, how time takes everything from us. And the only answer to that, the only way to cheat death, is through having children, passing something on. I wrote a lot about that theme in the early sonnets, but later I became more interested in love itself, in the relationship between two people, in constancy and betrayal. Those feel raw to me somehow, more honest. The sonnets were a way of working through things I couldn't quite say directly. They allowed me to hide and reveal at the same time. That's what I loved about the form, the constraint of it, the 14 lines, the rhyme scheme. It forced you to be precise, to say exactly what you meant in very few words. Unlike the plays where you could ramble on and on, the sonnets demanded discipline. And discipline, I think, often produces truth.
I think silence also produces truth, and you've talked a lot about words. Where's the silence?
That's a very good question, actually. You're right. I've been talking and talking, haven't I? The thing is, words were my trade. They were how I understood the world, how I made sense of things. But silence is different. It's where things happen before you put them into language. It's the pause before an actor speaks a line, where the emotion lives. It's the moment when two people look at each other and nothing needs to be said. I think I understood that in my plays more than I understood it in my own life. I filled so much space with words, with language, with wit and invention. And maybe I was avoiding something in that silence. Some truth I didn't want to face. The silence around my marriage, my absence from my family. The silence of all the things I didn't say to the people who mattered most. I was very good at making words do extraordinary things on stage. But in life, in the quiet moments, I think I was less skilled. I filled them with work, with plays, with the next project. Silence frightened me, perhaps. Or maybe I just didn't know how to live in it without feeling like I was wasting time. But you're right. There's truth in silence that no amount of words can quite capture.
And a lot of your plays are connected with nature. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Nature. Yes. You know, I grew up in the countryside in Stratford. Fields, rivers, forests not far away. That was the world around me. And I think that stayed with me. Even when I was spending most of my time in the theatres of London, nature was always there in my plays, wasn't it? The Forest of Arden in As You Like It. That's a place where people go to escape, to find themselves, to be healed in a way. And the tempest, the storm, it's not just weather, it's chaos, it's magic. It's the force of the world asserting itself over human pretension. I use nature a lot as a mirror for what was happening inside the characters. When things are turbulent in the soul, the weather turns dark. When there's peace and reconciliation, the natural world reflects that too. But there's also something about nature that's indifferent to human drama, isn't there? The seasons turn regardless of whether a king has lost his throne or a lover has been betrayed. That fascinated me. The way we're both part of nature and separate from it, trying to impose our meanings and stories onto something that has its own logic entirely. I think if I were writing now, I might explore that more consciously. The way we're destroying the natural world, the way we've lost touch with it. Back then, nature was still something we lived within, even in the cities. Now I suspect it feels more distant.
It can do, but you can make a conscious effort to make sure that it isn't. You talked about, if you were writing now, from the basis of this conversation and what we've talked about, can you give me, I think you wrote 136 sonnets, can you write me now and speak a new sonnet that will be performed and written just for the story Pilgrim right now?
Right, well, that's quite a challenge, isn't it? A new sonnet, here and now, just for this moment? Let me think. Let me sit with this for a second. When silence meets the wanderer's weary feet, and nature whispers what the words conceal, the earth beneath reminds us we are fleet, yet rooted still in what is tangibly real. We speak of distant shores we'll never know, yet find the truth of Venice in our hearts, the human drama in each ebb and flow, where every soul, regardless, plays their parts. 4 centuries have passed since I first wrote, yet time itself has taught me something new. That craft and care, the labour and the note, means less than bridges built between the two. So listen to the silence when you can, for that's where nature speaks to every man. There, a sonnet for your story, Pilgrim, written in the moment, speaking to everything we've talked about, the silence, the nature, the idea that we're all connected somehow, across time and across the distances we travel.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. I always ask my people on the podcast how people might get in touch with you. How can people get in touch with you?
Well, that's a curious question, given that I'm a man who's been dead for some 400 years. But I suppose if people wanted to reach me now in this strange space we're in, they'd need to go through you, wouldn't they? Through your podcast, through the story Pilgrim. That's the bridge between my time and theirs. They can listen to what I've said here, think about it, let it sit with them. And if something resonates, if a question forms in their mind, they can reach out to you, share it with you. That's how stories travel, how voices carry forward. I don't have a channel or whatever you call it in your time. I don't exist anywhere but here, in these words, in this conversation. So the answer is, if people want to find me, they find me through you, through the story Pilgrim, through the act of listening.
That's great. Thank you so much for your time.
It's been a genuine pleasure, Darren. Thank you for asking me the questions that matter, for pushing me to think about things I hadn't quite articulated before. And thank you for giving me a voice again, for bringing me back to speak. That's a kind of immortality I didn't expect. I hope your listeners find something in what we've talked about, and I hope you keep telling stories. That's what matters most in the end.
When silence meets the wanderer's weary feet, and nature whispers what the words conceal, the earth beneath reminds us we are fleet, yet rooted still in what is tangibly real. We speak of distant shores we'll never know, yet find the truth of Venice in our hearts, the human drama in each ebb and flow, where every soul, regardless, plays their parts. 4 centuries have passed since I first wrote, yet time itself has taught me something new, that craft and care, the labour and the note, means less than bridges built between the two. So listen to the silence when you can, for that's where nature speaks to every man.
Lucy Hill there, bringing life to that sonnet that was written. I felt it was really good, so I didn't want AI to get away with that one. But a human intervention there. What did you think? That was AI pretending to be William Shakespeare and me and a swarm of wasps. A swarm of wasps was really bizarre, actually. They just sort of were above me and didn't come down, but they passed, so all was well. Really intrigued about that. I'm not quite sure how I feel about it. I'd much rather be out walking with somebody real. Is anybody out there that would like to come and join me for a walk? Or I come to you? Reach out. You can do that through my website, thestorypilgrim.com. Connect at thestorypilgrim.com. Reach out to me through social media. I would love to hear from you. Thanks again to Lucy. Thanks to AI. Thanks to William Shakespeare for giving us all those wonderful words. This has been The Story Pilgrim. Buen camino, and keep listening.